Hello and welcome to another fantasy special from the Franchise Tag Podcast. Today we will be going over what I believe is the most important position in fantasy, which is the running backs. So me and Adam are going to try and plow through, what do we say, 47 names?
Yeah, 47. It's a bit that list is mental, so it should be fun. But yeah, hope we will plow through them. We won't be as slow as what we were last time, hopefully.
Yeah, with the quarterbacks, if we went a bit more in depth, it might be just a case of dropping them where they need to be. So let's have a little look at the board. Here we go. As you can see, as before, we've got elite, great, average, potential, and then after that, we've got backup at best instead of trash this time, because I don't think there's any trash.
Just quickly before we go into it, obviously a lot of people, this is for fantasy. People who want to come out and go, why isn't Tom Brady an elite? Yes, he is an elite quarterback. He has been an elite quarterback all of his life. But for fantasy, for this season coming up, maybe not quite in the top 4 or 5. Just saying.
Right, should we crack right into it? Like I said, there is a lot in here. So first up, we've got Alvin Kamara.
Alvin Kamara, I've got him going in the second round at the moment. I think there's a little bit of, we don't quite know regarding if there's going to be any potential suspension or anything. There's been some allegations, hasn't there, put up against him, so I'm not quite sure regarding that. But I think he's second round. I've got him probably 9th, 10th off the board. So I would say, what is it? Elite and great, isn't it? I'd say great. I think for elite, I think for this season, I think there's 5 that are like the real top. So I'd have him just slightly under that. So great.
Yeah, I think he's in there. There was a bit of a drop off last year from him, and he wasn't great for fantasy, was he? And I think we might see a little bit more of that. So yeah, I think that's the right position for him. He's a bit of a gamble at the minute, isn't he? But when he's producing the goods, he is great. So that's a perfect spot for him.
It is also difficult with Winston because we don't know. I mean, when you remember what Winston was like, I mean, he loves to throw that ball everywhere. So, you just don't know if he's going to get as many reps as what he had before.
Up next, we've got the little touchdown machine that was last year. It's James Conner. Do you think he can reproduce what he did?
James Conner, yeah, it's a difficult one because obviously, like you say, he got loads of touchdowns. I think it was it 16 he got last year, 16, 18, something like that. It was crazy. I think he will probably drop off a little bit. I mean, there is just regression as there is with most players when they have such a big season. I don't think he'll get quite as many touchdowns. Having said that, with Chase Edmonds now gone, it's Eno Benjamin, isn't it? And yeah, so I kind of feel like he's probably going to be the main guy. I think I would. It's difficult. I think he's that in between great and average.
Yeah, I think we should put him in. I think we should put him in average because I still personally think, despite the fact I'd love to have him on my team and I would happily pick him, I think I'm picking him as my second choice running back. I'm not picking him if I'm in the first round. If he's still going to be on there, I'm probably looking at some of the other names first. So I think you can't be in that great elite category if you're going to be a second choice. But what a great second choice he would be if he can get him. I think he's a very early second round pick if you've already got someone.
Yeah, I think when you look at Conner, I mean, he seems to be going towards the back of the third round, which I suppose would make sense if you were to take him as your second running back. I don't think you would have him any higher.
Yeah, and you picked up on another name there. Just want to give him a bit of a shout out. I think Eno Benjamin is someone to watch out in the middle of the season. There were some flashes of talent from him last year, and I think he's one to keep on your radar of watching on the waivers. But yeah, don't pick him. But yeah, just one to watch out for. So next up is Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs it's a bit of a difficult one, isn't it? Because he's had his 5th year. They're not taking him up after that. So you kind of feel like the team are a little bit out on him. I don't think that he's that great. I mean, he will get you a certain amount of touchdowns, but I don't think he'll get you loads. I think they're moving away from the run game. Devontae Adams coming in. I think it's going to be a lot more pass heavy than what it was before. So I think average is probably fair. I think he's your RB2, maybe even your RB3. I mean, he's going roughly around the sort of 4th, 5th round, so maybe the end of the 4th, beginning of the 5th. So I think average is probably fair for him, but I wouldn't be thinking that he's going to have an amazing season. I think he would definitely be in a normal redraft league, he'd probably be your flex option.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the RB1. I think he's going to get a lot of work. I think he's going to be used. But I think fantasy-wise, he's going to have a big drop-off because they've drafted Zamir White, the big heavy runner from Georgia. Obviously, James Cook was more of the catching one, and Zamir White was the big back. And I think they might use Zamir White in those sort of shorter goal line efforts over Jacobs, who's a bit smaller. So I think that's where you're going to lose a bit of fantasy value from him. But equally, he's going to be the starter and he's going to get a lot of work in that middle. So I think average is a right place for him as well. Next up is Devin Singletary.
Devin Singletary, I haven't got him in my top 30. So before we started this, I just wrote down my top 30 list. I haven't got him in my top 30. It's the weakest area for the Bills offense. It's not something that they particularly succeed at very well and haven't done over the last few years. I think actually saying it, he did okay as a last year, but I think that was predominantly because Zach Moss was not really doing much. They've brought in Dalvin Cook's brother, who I've completely forgotten his name. Is it
James Cook?
James, right. They brought in James Cook. I think you might see it quite an even split, and I don't think that it's necessarily going to be that that they're going to get lots of reps because of it. I think Josh Allen rushes in loads of touchdowns as well. Yeah, I would. I think now is probably the beginning of the end for Singletary, to be honest. So I wouldn't have him very high.
Yeah, I would. If he hadn't have had a good portion towards the back end of the year, those last sort of 2-3 games in the playoffs, I would have said just I'm out on him. I couldn't pick between him or Moss, which would be the starter anyway. I think he will be the starter because, again, like I said, I mentioned his name a couple of minutes ago. I think James Cook will be used to catch it out of the backfield a lot more and be used on those wider plays. But I would not want to risk taking Singletary. If he has a couple of bad games, I don't think they'll play him. I don't think they'll start him. We saw him in and out last year. So I think he's a backup at best.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he's going to be a bench spot for you. That's kind of what you're looking at. But the one good thing, I suppose you could argue with Singletary is that he might be a decent bench spot for you because, the fact of the matter is like he's what? I mean, he will start. He will get plenty of reps over the course of the season. So in that respect, he's a good bench spot. But I wouldn't have him any higher than that.
Yeah, Josh Allen's the better running back.
Yeah.
Next up is Ronald Jones, who's now at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I think, he is, isn't he? Now, I don't know with Ronald Jones. I mean, you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire still there. It's another team where the running game isn't necessarily the main focus. It's going to be all Mahomes and to his wide receivers. Although according to Tyreek Hill, he's not as accurate as Tua, so that's something. So maybe he will start using the running backs a bit more. But I wouldn't. Again, I think it's probably, to me, he might even be a little bit less than Singletary. He's a bench spot, but that's it. I wouldn't have him anywhere else.
I don't think he's even a bench spot. I'm not sure he was worth the risk. I think he's been brought in there to help if Clyde-Edwards-Helaire gets injured again, because that was the issue with Edwards-Helaire. I really like him. He's great at LSU. He can be the lead running back for Kansas for what they want out of a running back. And I think, yeah, he's just been brought in there as safety precaution. So, yeah, I probably would leave him on the waivers. Next up, we've got Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon back at Denver. He had a decent year. He didn't actually have a bad year last year. I actually think it will be exactly the same when it comes to the running backs. I think they will keep it the same in that respect. I mean, he was the 17th quarterback, so, you know, there's not to be sniffed at all. The only thing is that obviously Russell Wilson, much more likely to get involved in the run game, much more likely to get involved in certainly passing a lot more than what Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock would do. So you do feel like there's going to be a bit of regression for Melvin Gordon, in the same way that there'll be a bit of regression for Javonte Williams as well. But I think he's still a solid player. He's still going to be seen a lot. He's definitely, I think he's probably potential. I don't think I'd necessarily have him quite as high as average, because I just don't think that he's going to see as much as what he did before. I think there will be a drop off. Yeah, I think potential is probably about right for him.
Yeah, it's a shame, because obviously I still think he's an RB1 caliber. I think a team could get the best out of him, and I still think he's. Oh, we said it before. He's not as old as what everybody thinks. I think he's like 27, 28. So, you know, he's still a great back. But I think you've got to put him in potential, because until you see what the split's going to be when they start playing and what mouths they're feeding at that team, you can't rest your laurels on him being the number one for you every week in one of those spots. I think it's got to be in the potential. I think we're right there.
Yeah, last year, I mean, like I said, Gordon and Williams, they both had 203 attempts each when it came to the rushing. It was split pretty equal. Gordon had a little bit less in the passing game, but you can kind of expect that a little bit now. Yeah, I think he does. He really is someone who could maybe, I think RB1 might be pushing it a little bit. I'm not sure he could quite be in the top 12, but I do feel like he has that ability to certainly be a very strong RB2. But the problem is that he hasn't got the opportunity at Denver because Williams is there. So
works well for Denver, though, doesn't it? You're always going to keep someone healthy in that case. So next up is James Cook, one of the rookies. Got one of the new boys on there.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be one who's, you know, I kind of saw a little bit of tape on him. He looks all right. He's not. I don't think he's the best running back coming out, but I think he could be decent. Look, I think he's probably a bench spot. I don't think you'd be, because I think to be brutally honest, I think you're going to be drafting him quite low. So I don't think he's going to be anything more than that. But he's certainly one that might be worth gambling on. And compared to, personally, I think I'd rather gamble on him than I would Singletary.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think he's well worth a gamble. And like I said, if you saw him at Georgia, he was used to more in the catching game, and they used Zamir White in more of the running. So that team, I think that's going to be perfect. He's only just going to add another weapon. So I think he's definitely worth a potential spot, and he could take that running back spot completely if he shines, because the others haven't done. So I think he's definitely a potential easily. Okay, so next up is Mark Ingram.
Where's Mark Ingram at the moment?
Back at the Saints, isn't he?
Is he at Houston?
No, I thought he'd gone to back to the Saints.
Has he gone back to the Saints? So he's going to be. Oh yes, of course they're doing the yeah. So it's 2016, is it, in the Saints locker room again? Yeah, I don't hold out a great deal of hope. Obviously, Kamara is going to take most of it, so I think I'm not even sure I'd have him on the bench, to be honest.
No, I think it's an easy one. We don't need to waste our time on this. He's a backup at best, if you can say that. Next up is another guy I don't think we're going to spend too much time on. It's Chris Carson. News came out that he might retire due to his neck injury. So
yeah, it's a shame about Carson. He's kind of, I don't feel like he ever really fulfilled his potential. He always seemed like he could do it, but he's always picked up niggling injuries, and now obviously this one's a lot more serious. Yeah, again, I think unfortunately this is it, and the fact that they drafted Kenneth Walker is probably all you really need to know.
Yeah. We might have our first elite one now. Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor, yeah, I mean, it's great. It's mental, absolutely mental. And he was the number one running back last year, 1,800 plus yards, 20 touchdowns all told in passing and in the running game. Yeah, he's elite. This isn't it isn't complicated. He's not my number one, but he's very, very close though.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be in conversations with who's taken with the first. If you've got the first pick in the draft, his name is definitely going to be at the top of most people's lists, depending on who you like. But yeah, it's easily elite. What he produced last year it was fantastic, and you see progression from him every time. So there's no indication that there'll be any drop off for it for next year.
No.
Next up is Damien Harris.
I like Damien Harris. I think he's been decent for the Patriots. I think he's been okay. I mean, he's going around the sort of 6th round at the moment, so he's kind of one of them running backs that if you decide to go like no quarterback in the first few rounds and no running back in the first few rounds and you sort of like decide to wait it out a bit and do that, then he's certainly one of the guys you want to pick up. I mean, he came in he was the number 8 running back last year. He's a good running back. He's solid. I don't really see much changing for him, to be honest. I don't think they drafted a running back.
They did.
They did. Who have I forgotten?
They got Pierre Strong, who was rated in the top 10 coming out of the rookies. So I think that's just a case of New England being New England and stocking that running back room up because they lost a few names. So that's my issue with them. They tend to, although Harris is their lead and he is their number 1 running back, they do like to bring in. Last year they used Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
They've got Pierre Strong now, James White, JJ Taylor has a little bit of the ball. So they do like to use a lot of the guys, but Harris is definitely the guy there, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the one that they're going to focus on. I mean, like I said, I don't think he'll hit like 8th again. I think he will come down. I mean, he had 15 touchdowns. It was basically joint 2nd highest in the league when it comes to rushing. He won't do that. He will drop a little bit, and so I think for that, I think average is probably a pretty decent spot for him. But I think that's fair.
I think he's in with James Conner. I think that's a similar sort of comparison you're probably using to pick as well. You've got your first guy. I think they're the guys' names that are on the list for who you're picking as your second guy. So
the only thing I would say is that Conner is going in the 3rd round and Harris is going in the 6th. So, if you want some value.
That's some good value. Next up is Zeke.
Zeke, everyone is out on Zeke, aren't they? They're just all going that he's knackered and he's old and it's all over for him. I don't know. I think it's the same as what happened last year. Everyone was saying this and was saying that he was done. And then he had a season where he was the 6th best running back in the league, which to me is pretty good. So I wouldn't say he's done at all. I think he's more than capable again of having another decent season. I think if he stays fit, obviously, then he can hit another 1,000-yard season. He could hit, double-digit touchdowns again. Nothing's really changed that much on the Cowboys offense apart from Amari Cooper going. So I think he's got a really good chance of doing it again. When it comes to, he's been drafted 2nd round. So I don't know if I'd want him as my RB1. I think we just all kind of feel a little bit like the wheels are going to fall off at some point and we're just waiting for it to happen. And so we're all a little bit scared to take him. But yeah, I mean, I think he's all right. And like I say, he's kind of going in the second round. I think if I went running back and he was my second running back, then I'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, I mean, where do you want to put him? Because for me, although he has declined every year since sort of his rookie years, he's still a great running back in my eyes. I still think he's really, really good. I don't think that, you know, is it the Cowboys that are the problem? He can't prove himself to be the leader of the team. He needs guys around him, which is a bit of a shame. But I think he's a lot better than the guys that we've got in average at the moment.
I think great
talent, but low end.
I think great is probably where he should be. I think he's a really good option. I just feel that he's probably going to end up towards the back end of that.
Yeah, he's not going to be up there like he used to be at one of the sort of first 10 picks off of the board that it had been in previous years. But I think the fact that Pollard has shown how good he is and he could be potentially the future at the running back there, I think that's going to be his issue. If Pollard wasn't as good, I think Zeke everyone would still be picking him quite high.
Yeah.
Next up, Miles Sanders.
I feel that Sanders kind of loses out because of the Eagles are kind of turning themselves into the Patriots a little bit with the run game. It's kind of going down that way. There's a lot of different guys that are being used. And I think because of that, you kind of saw Sanders drop down. Not only that, obviously, he did pick up an injury during the season, so he did drop down last year. I've got him kind of hovering around the back of like an RB2. So he's kind of I think he's number 23 on my list. So I think he's a good running back. The guys at average, I think, are probably where he should be. He's kind of the back end of average, though, in my view.
I think he's higher than back end of average. I think this guy has the potential to be in your team every week and scoring well. I still think he's going to be the main running back there if he doesn't get injured. I don't think Gainwell showed enough to take his place, and Boston Scott does what Boston Scott's been doing for the last few years for them. So I think this guy has, in a team that has improved massively and they've got a good O-line, I think he's an underrated running back. I think he could be potentially great, but I'm not ready to put him there yet. So I'd put him as high average.
I think I saw that he was kind of going around the 5th round, sort of middle of the 5th round,
steal,
which I think is good. I think it's a good price to be getting him. It's another one where if you're not going to go running backs in the first couple of rounds, then it's the way forward. To me, I think it kind of, everything feels very similar to Damien Harris for me. It's that sort of thing. I think that his talent is maybe a little bit more, but I just feel like the situation at the Eagles is kind of a bit Patriots-like. And definitely. The other thing is, I do wonder if when the only difference is obviously you've got Jalen Hurts who runs a lot more as well, so that kind of takes a bit away. But I do wonder with AJ Brown there whether that's going to maybe move the sort of mentality a little bit as well, and that's why I think he's a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm. Next up is DeAndre Swift.
Swift is a really, really good running back in a team that, you know, is still struggling. So you have to feel that they're going to lean quite a lot on the running back. I've got him as number 8 for me. I think for this season, definitely, I would have him in great. I'd have him towards the back of great. But yeah, I think he's definitely an RB1. I mean, you're taking him at the sort of beginning of the 2nd round is what I've seen. So he's a good shout. He's not a bad running back. So yeah, I think you'd want him if you picked up, especially if you're around the turn, if you picked up a good wide receiver, say you took like a Jamar Chase or something at 1.9, 1.10, and then you pick this guy up, I think you'd be pretty happy.
I don't think this guy's going to be on the board, especially in our league, past round 1. I think if he was on any other team, we'd be putting him in elite. I think he's that good of a talent. I think he's proved that he is elite as well with what he can produce fantasy scores wise. I just think it's the team that lets him down a little bit and moves him down into the great section. But yeah, I can see him going off of most round one in most leagues. I can see that.
Yeah, he is pretty. I'm not quite sure what he comes out as, but he is quite close to that. It's yeah, so 15.7. So he's basically averaging the 2.3. So I mean that seems to be roughly around where he's going. I think with the big names coming off, I think a lot of people will gamble on him a bit earlier in a lot of leagues. So yeah.
Next up is Tony Pollard.
Yeah, Pollard, I think, unfortunately, is back up still, just purely because of Zeke being there. I think Zeke's going to be the main guy. So one day Pollard might take that job. But, you know, a lot of people are hanging on to him in Dynasty, still hoping. But, yeah, I think he has shown that he's decent. It's just he's got Zeke in front of him, and I don't see it changing.
Yeah, he's not going to get you many points, even if you've got him in for the flex. I don't think he's even good enough for that at the moment. So yeah, he's got to be in there. I think he'll still be on the waivers. If Zeke has an injury or whatever, then you'll be wanting to pick him up straight away. Next up is Joe Mixon.
I really like Mixon. Mixon's been he had a really good year last year. I think everyone was a little concerned about him because he has always seemed to pick up a few injuries, but I think we can definitely see his how much better he's been since Joe Burrow's been there. I think that's made a massive difference, and it's really opened up the run game for him. I really like Mixon. I actually think he's pretty roughly around the same spot as Swift, but he's a first round guy, Mixon. He seems to be the one who is going in the first round, and then Swift just dropping slightly out. I think he's the top of great. I really do. I just don't think he quite sneaks into elite. I think there are just slightly better guys there.
Yeah, I think he's a top 10 guy. He's going to be round one straight away. Once the big names are gone, he might even be, for some people, he might be one of the big names. I think he's that good. It's only his injury worries that we've had. I've always said Bengals are only good when Joe Mixon's fit. So that's how important he is to that team. And I think they're going to be contenders again for another year. So he's in a good position with that team. I think you're right, though, that he's not quite up in that elite category yet, but he's the top end of great, top end of great, bordering the elite. Next up is Leonard Fournette.
Fournette is, how old is Fournette now? He's been going forever.
I bet he's not as old as you think.
Is he not? It feels like he's been going forever. With Ronald Jones leaving, I know they brought in someone. Was it Rashad White? Was that who it was? Yeah. So they brought in Rashad White, and they've got Gio Bernard there. But I think we all saw that Fournette is the main guy for Brady when it comes to the running back, and I think he's going to get a lot of chances. I think he'll do quite well. I think purely because of that, he's got to be pretty high up. I mean, he was the running back 11 last year. He hasn't got amazing numbers, but he was still the running back 11, and I feel like it will be a similar thing again. So, you know, I've got him as my number 12. He's going in the second round. I think he's great. I think he should be in the great section, but he is like the end of the great section.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to forget about him. I think people are going to be caught up with the other names just because everyone, like you've just said, everyone thinks he's been around forever. He's 27 years old. He's still fit enough to be, he's not one of those old guys that you're just bringing in to get 5 yards here and there and then letting them have a rest. He can still do the business. So I think you're right. I think he's worth a gamble, and at the back end of that, I think he offers a bit more value than some of the other guys. Next up, Marlon Mack.
Marlon Mack is so far down the board, it's untrue. It is unbelievable. But he's really got a chance to start in Houston. He really does. And he's a bench spot. He is. There's no other place for him to go, because you're just going to end up taking running backs that are going to start and are going to be more valuable to you beforehand. So he is a bench spot, but the fact of the matter is everyone should be drafting this guy, like everyone. And this is horrible to say because we're in the fantasy league together, and by saying things like this, they're going to listen to it and draft them from us. But everyone should be drafting him. He should be on your bench in a redraft league, 12 or 14 teams or whatever you've got, because he will have the opportunity to do something. And he was always really good at the Colts. He just got injured and he's over that now. So he's definitely worth a punt. I don't know exactly where he's going normally, but from what I have seen of the drafts that I've done, he's like the 12th round or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely bench, but it's must draft as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a definite. I massively rate him. If anybody watches the main show, I talk about him all the time. I think he's a great talent. He's only 26 years old. He had that one season where he was injured, and then Jonathan Taylor took his chance, really, and that's the only reason he was out at the Colts. No other reason. He was always great. I think he's in a situation now like Connor was the first year that Connor was left the Steelers. So last year, no one picked him, did they? I mean, I got him real late on last year, and look what Connor did. And I think Mac has the potential to do that. I think he's worth a lot more than any of those guys that we've got on backup. I also think he's got it worth more than as much as Gordon and Cook that we've got in potential. So are we happy that he's going in potential?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for you to put him in potential. He does have loads of potential there. I personally, I think he's a bench spot because he will be a bench spot. But yeah, I can completely agree that there's loads of potential there for him. It's very difficult because obviously he didn't play last year. But yeah, you got to draft him. Mm-hmm. Everyone.
Right, next up, Chase Edmonds.
So Chase Edmonds has gone to Miami, hasn't he?
Yeah, with everybody else.
With everyone else, yeah. It kind of feels. I know Mostert's gone there. Who else has gone?
Sony Michel's gone there.
Sony Michel's gone there. So
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Miles Gaskin's still there.
Oh God, is he still there?
Yeah.
I think because of that, it's very difficult, isn't it, to work out who exactly is going to be taking most of it. I assume Mostert will probably be the big back. Chase Edmonds, like he was in Arizona, be the pass catching back. I think, he was number 37. So to me, he's a bench spot. Last year, he was number 37. I can't guarantee you that he's going to have a better season. I can't guarantee you he'll have a worse one. I mean, he might do the same. Could be anything. But yeah, I don't think he's one that you'd be drafting.
Yeah, I couldn't gamble on it. Not with the amount of names they've got in there, and not at the fact that they've never managed to hit much on running backs. No. And I think he could just fade into the background of that team, and someone else take their chance. So I couldn't risk picking him. Maybe as a bench spot, late last round, one of them risks.
Yeah,
but, yeah. Next up is another one of the rookies. It's Breece Hall.
Now, Breece Hall, I had a look. Obviously, it's difficult with rookies who have never played. There's no real obviously, there's no NFL experience there. But I kind of feel like the Jets have made a bit of a splash by taking Breece Hall. He was the number one running back. They had Michael Carter there already, so it's not like they had a bad running back there. Breece Hall's going to get used a lot because he's the number one running back that went. They're not going to not use this guy. So I think because of that, he's definitely going to be one that is worth having a look at. He's going in the 5th round. To me, there's a lot of guys that I would rather go for rather than Breece Hall, purely because they've got the the experience and they've shown what they can do. Having said that, I think you have to put him in potential. I think he's probably in the top part of potential. I've got him as my number 25, so he's literally just out of RB2 going into RB3. So I think potential is probably a fair spot for him.
Yeah, he's RB3 for me. I really like Michael Carter. I thought it was. I had him on my team, had to drop him, and then you stole him, and he did great for you. But yeah, I really like Michael Carter. I think he's good enough. They're definitely going to split carries. Carter's used to that anyway. Split carries at college with Javonte Williams, so he's very used to that. And Breece Hall, I think he's a bit of a downfield runner, so he'll be used to run up the middle. That's not great for fantasy, but
no.
He's a great back. So there's definitely potential with him. Next up is a guy we just spoke about. I think he might be going in the same places where his teammate went. It's Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, I quite liked Mostert when he was at San Francisco. I thought it was good, but yeah, he's definitely a bench spot, and even then, I think it's a bit of a gamble.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on because it's the same conversation that we had with Edmonds, really.
Yeah.
Just ditto next to it. Okay, Christian McCaffrey.
So McCaffrey, I mean, last year obviously he missed a few games through injury. He's missed the last couple of years. Having said all that, he still did okay considering the amount of time that he missed. I think we all know he's a quality running back. We all know that he is elite. We all know that he is the guy that probably should be the 101. I mean, I've got him as my number one. He should be taken at the 101. And if he can stay fit, I think he will do exactly the same as what he's done once he's been fit. Obviously, that is the problem, and that's the risk that you take. But it depends if you want to go for that gamble at the beginning. Nothing has really changed for him. The offense is pretty much similar to what it was before. The quarterback situation is still pretty much the same. It's still not great. And yeah, I would have him as my 101. Having said all of that, I completely understand why people would take Jonathan Taylor, but I would have him as my 101.
Yeah, he's not my 101. I couldn't risk. I've done it too many times and been stung by picking great running backs and then getting injured and be struggling. In 14-man league, if you get your main running back injured, you are struggling for the year. So that would be my risk with him, and the only reason I wouldn't be picking him as 101, but he's elite. So he is. There's no question about it. If he's fit, he is scoring monster points for you. Next up is Antonio Gibson.
Gibson, I remember when he first came out, I really liked Gibson. I thought he did really well. I had him in a couple of dynasty leagues. I took him as a rookie, and he did really well. Last year, he kind of struggled a little bit. I don't quite know what. It just felt like he struggled anyway. I don't know if it was just a couple of injuries. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Having said all that, he still finished as the RB10 last year. He had over 1,000 yards. He got 7 touchdowns. So when it comes to, purely when it comes to rushing, so he did really well. He seems to be being pushed down on a lot of people's boards. I mean, he's looking at the back of the third is where he seems to be being drafted a lot. I like him. I think he's definitely one that you would look at. I think he's an RB2. I'd probably have him in the average section, not quite great. He's one of them that's in between for me, but I'd have him at the top of the average.
Yeah, they also brought in Brian Robinson from Alabama, who I really wanted to come to the Giants and be backup for Saquon. So he might split some carries with him if it doesn't hit for him. And J.D. McKissick is used in a bit more than usual. So but Gibson's proved himself to be good in fantasy, so why not? Next up is a guy you really like. It's Javonte Williams.
Yeah, one of the guys who carried me to the franchise tag fantasy league last year. And it looks like the other guy's coming up afterwards. So, yeah, Javonte Williams, really like him. Unfortunately, Melvin Gordon still being there means exactly the same as last year. As like I said before, I think he's, to me, I've got him as my number 14. I do feel that he might just nick a bit more from Gordon and Gordon have a little bit less than last year. I've got him at 14. I I kind of had it in my head that Great would be the end of RB1, and I think that Williams is probably going to be a very high RB2, but I do really like him, and I think that he will do well for your team. So I'd probably have him at the back of Great, but it's close. Yeah, I will accept average on him.
Yeah, he's up and coming. He's great. He's had 1 year of showing his brilliance. Splitting calories. It's the only thing you've got to bring him down on. The other guys that are doing great aren't splitting carries with other guys. They're going to be the main guys. So I think that's the only thing that drops him down to a slightly lesser value. On to the next guy, the guy that I believe you've even bought a ball with his name on because you're that proud of him. It's Austin Eckler.
Well, I had to celebrate my win somehow, didn't I? And I finally got one of a signed ball from Mr. Eckler. He's elite. He was the RB2 last year. I think he'll do the same again. The offense hasn't changed at the Chargers. I'm the only thing that would make me think that he might come down a little bit is purely because McCaffrey being fit, I think would be a reason why he'd come down, and Derrick Henry being fit. They're the only reasons that I would say he would come down. I've got him as my number 4. So, yeah, I think he'll be great. He's great in the passing game. He's great rushing. I don't see anything changing.
Yeah, outside of the guys that you kind of would be nominating to be the rusher of the year, he's the top. He's the next name after that, isn't he? You know,
yeah.
And it's surely because he's so good when you get the ball in his hands from catching it. And I think that's what he offers more than any of the other guys, which is why his fantasy value is so good. He's just not built like the other guys to be the main runner and get those yards with his feet as much as the guys that are above him. But he's definitely elite for fantasy. And he's easily in there for just catching the ball alone. His points value is really mega. So he is elite. Next up is Cam Akers.
Akers, I've got him as my number 18. I just don't. The run game isn't massive for the Rams. I don't feel it feels it's very much a pass heavy offense, and that was kind of how they won last year. When you look at Akers, obviously he's coming back from that injury. He didn't seem the same. I don't know if it was because they rushed him back or what it was, but he just didn't seem the same guy that he was before that injury. I think he's average. I think he's probably in the sort of top half of average. Like I said, I've got him as an 18, so he's an RB2 for me. But yeah, I don't think he's. I don't think he'll necessarily get the reps in order to make him great.
Yeah, I think he's in the right category with the guys we've got him settled in there with Connor and Miles Sanders and Harris. I think he's around that ability. I think he's an absolutely fantastic running back. They've got 3 different types of style of guy there now with Akers, Henderson, and they got Kyren Williams as well, who I think could have a bit more impact in fantasy later on in the year. He might be a name that we're talking about a bit more. But yeah, I think that's where he is in the average. I think if he hadn't have had the injuries and he burst onto the scene like I thought he would, we might have been talking about this guy in the great section. But until that happens, average is where he's at.
Yeah.
Next guy up is David Montgomery.
Yeah, Montgomery. He's going to see a lot of the ball. That's certainly one thing we can say. There's not a lot going on in Chicago. So yeah, Montgomery's going to see an awful lot of the ball. having said all that, he did see quite a lot of the ball last year, and he finished as the number 20 running back. That offense isn't. I don't
He
see
was
it
injured
scoring.
though, wasn't he? He was injured for quite a bit, wasn't he? Didn't they have Khalil Herbert
He,
at running back for a bit?
yeah, he did a bit, but I mean, he did have a lot of attempts. He had 225 attempts. It was pretty high. I mean, obviously there were some that were a lot higher, but I would say he was probably in the top 20 when it comes to attempts. So he did he missed a few games. I've got him as my number 17. I think he'll do slightly more just because I think that he's going to have to, because there's no one else. It's like there just isn't anyone else there. So I think he's going to have to step up a little bit. I think that the interesting one, if you look at the rushing, if you look at the yards per attempt, he was at 3.8, which was quite low compared to guys above him. That I think that's probably where he is. And then if you look at if you look at a lot of the guys below him as well, it's quite low. I think there is a ceiling for him, so I'd have him as an RB2. I think he's average, but I mean, he's going in the third round. I don't think I would be taking him in the third round.
I think his talent is great. I think he's equally as good as some of the guys. I think as Zeke and Fournette. It's again for him, like Swift, he's coming down a grade because of the team that he's on. They did nothing to overly massively to improve that O-line that struggled, and that's not good for a running back. But I think he is a great running back. That Bears team's not great.
He's a really good running back. He's playing for a bad team, and that's what probably makes him average. So, you know.
Next up, Saquon Barkley.
Did you see I put a video out for your boy? I put him out there.
I was going to reply to it, but I thought I'll just chat to you in normal.
He's going in the third round. I think it's worth a punt. I really do. I would rather be having a go with Barkley than I would be with Montgomery. I think that the O-line has improved. I think the coaching has improved, and the wide receiver room hasn't changed, and the quarterback hasn't changed, which makes me feel that the running back, I think Barkley's going to get a really good chance. If he can stay fit, which I don't really see why he can't. He's past his ACL injury. He showed last year that he can play. So I think, I'm not saying that he's going to be the number one guy or anything like that, but I do think he's got a very good chance. I've got him as my number 15. If I could get him in the third round as my second running back, I'd be very, very happy. I think he's towards the top of the average, but his talent is much more, and he really does have a lot of potential to push on.
Yeah, if he's fit and he has been cleared, the Giants have said he's good. He's not been redshirted in training. He's been in there. He's been in all the drills. I said to you before that even all started that they were going to start using him a bit more in the catching game and line him up as wide receiver. You laughed at me. And in training, he has been doing that. So I think they're going to use him a lot. I think he's easily, value-wise, the same value as Zeke. Easily. I think he's the same value. I don't think he's average. Yeah. I think if he doesn't get injured, you're holding him on something that we've got an elite guy in there, Christian McCaffrey, who's been injured for the last two and a half years. Same with Barkley. Barkley was number one talent before his injury. I think he's easily great.
Yeah, look, I'm not, like I say, I've got him as 15. My main reason I've got him a lot lower is because I think he's on a team that probably aren't going to score tons of points. That's the problem. It kind of feels like a lot of that is a massive gamble. You just don't know what's going to happen. I feel they're going to improve. To me, like I said, the coaching has improved, the O-line's improved, so everything tells me that the running back game should probably improve because of that. But I just don't know. When you look at who else is in front of him, I feel there's more dead certs in front of him. And although McCaffrey obviously has had his injury problems, he's so good when he's fit that you kind of can't ignore it, sort of thing. And that, I think that's the difference. I know Barkley had one season where he was amazing, and that was it. Whereas for McCaffrey did it for a few years in a row, and you know that if he's fit, he's going to be great. Whereas for Barkley, it's like he's done it 1 year and he hasn't done anything since because of the injuries. So you hope he would be able to, come back. But
I'd pick him before. I'd pick him before Fournette. Would you?
I mean, I would. So because Fournette, because of where they're going, I'd probably take Barkley personally.
There we go.
Because for me, I think Barkley in the 3rd round is worth a lot more than Fournette in the 2nd. But that's more of a value thing. But yeah, I would probably go.
Okay, on to one of your boys. Let's move on. That's enough Barkley chat. It's first up is AJ Dillon.
Yeah, AJ Dillon. I've got him a little bit. I've got him lower than Aaron Jones. I do feel it's going to become a bit more of an equal split compared to what it was last time. If you look at stats, they are quite similar on attempts, but Aaron Jones kind of a lot more in the passing game, so he had sort of gained a lot more because of that. I think you're going to see more of Dillon. I would have him as average, as probably near the back of average personally, but he's a really good running back, and you're going to start to see more from him.
Yeah,
I also think he's going in the 7th round, so he's like your RB3 flex or possibly even like bench spot because of that, because he's really good value for where he's going.
It's the same conversation here that we've just had with the Broncos guys. It's exactly the same conversation. I just feel that the Packers are going to use the run game a lot more than what the Broncos are going to use situational wise. So that's why their value is worth more than the Broncos guys. But you've got the same situation. They're as good, if not better. So yeah, we're probably looking at an average and a great rather than a potential and an average. That's the story of it. Next up is Elijah Mitchell, someone that no one's talking about, despite the fact he's great.
Yeah, I mean, you say he's great, but he did finish as the number 24, so he's not that great.
He didn't play that many games, did he?
He played. Yeah, he didn't. I don't think he started, did he, at the beginning? I think he missed a few games at the beginning, and so obviously he would have come up a little bit more. Yeah, Mitchell's good, and obviously that run game at San Francisco is well known that it's going to do well. It's really, really difficult to have any sort of authority about what you want to say when it comes to the running back in San Francisco at the moment, because you don't know who the quarterback's going to be. If it's going to be Trey Lance, that's going to be potentially an issue. But if it's going to be Jimmy G again, then you know what you're getting. So it's like, it's not that bad. I think he's probably, I've got him 26. I think he's probably average towards the back end of average just because of the situation. But he is going around the 6th round. If he's the starter and he keeps playing and it's Jimmy G again, then he's going to shoot up the boards, I think, quite quick.
Yeah, I really like this guy's quality. I'm just worried that the 49ers last year they started. Jeff Wilson started. What was it? Mahasty started. Trey Sermon's there, and we don't really know what's going on there. They had Mostert start. They never seem to commit to someone. I think this guy is the guy that they committed to the most. But I saw them make some dodgy decisions with their RBs.
I think that's a Shanahan thing, isn't it? I think he doesn't commit to one. It's running back by committee, but the problem is that the committee has got about 4 guys in it rather than 2. So it's very difficult, and that's probably why he's dropping down the boards a little bit. Like I said, I think it's really difficult. I think he's probably average because of the situation.
I think you've got to put him in potential slightly. Because this is what I remember last year. He was consistently playing well, big scores. I think Byron had him. And then Jeff Wilson was a starter one week instead of him for no reason. And Jeff Wilson had a good game. So I think for that reason, you've got to put him in potential until we know what's going on. I mean, I'm happy to put him in average because he's good enough to be in with those guys. But what do you reckon?
Well, like I said, I've got him at number 26. So my theory behind what we're doing is very much the great is the end of RB1, average is the end of RB2, potential is RB3, and then bench kind of thing. So because he's 26, I'd probably have him as an RB3. So I'm quite happy with him in potential. I just feel that I suppose there is always that chance that if he does hit, he could really go up the board.
Mm-hmm. Next guy up is a guy that you've been talking about a little bit in this offseason. It's J.K. Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins, yeah, like J.K. Dobbins, obviously had a bad injury last year and didn't play at all, but he showed what he could do the year before. I think the thing that everyone needs to remember with J.K. Dobbins is that obviously, yes, he was injured, but he didn't even start the season. So he's had plenty of time to sort all them problems out. It's like, if you're getting an ACL tear in January, then start worrying about the beginning of this season. But if you're getting one or you're getting injured before the season's even started, he's had plenty of time. So he will be fine. And I think he's definitely, for me, he's an RB2, just purely because there is that injury risk. But I do think he'll be okay. He's going around the 4th round, which I think is, he's around Jacobs and Gibson and them sort of guys. I think because of that, I think he's average, but I think he's definitely one that if you wanted to take him as your RB2, it might be worth a punt.
Yeah, top end of average. I've seen some of his tape. I don't know if anybody else has of him at practice where he's running around the pads and he takes out the trainer. He ran through the trainer. So this guy's fit and ready to go. So they use the run game a lot, and he will be their RB1. Gus Edwards will back him up. I think he's got potential to be great, but at this minute, he's in the average still, we know, isn't he?
Yeah. And obviously Gus Edwards being there is an issue sort of thing. It's like he will take certain reps from him, so that will knock him down a bit. But yeah, I think average is fine.
Next up is a bit of a guy that's only ever gets talked about in fantasy. It's Nyheim Hines.
Nyheim, yeah. Yeah, I haven't even got him in my top 30. He's not going to do much. He's probably a bench spot. And look, it all runs through Jonathan Taylor, doesn't it? So
yeah, he's good some weeks for you, but he's not good every week at all. Some weeks he'll score none. Here's your other boy. I think we briefly talked about putting him in great already. So Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I think it's very much. I've got him as number 13, so I've got him right at the very top of average. But I can understand why people would have him in great at the back end of it. I think because of Dillon, that's probably what's going to knock him down a bit. But yeah, he's quality running back, and I think he's going to have another good year because, like you said, that running game's going to have to do something. So.
He's the proven guy as well. If in situations, I mean, they're an organization where I think they go to guys that have been there and done it. And he is the guy now at that team on offense, bar their quarterback, that has been there and done it with them. And I think they're going to put the ball in his hands if they need to over Dillon. Dillon will be used when the game is going their way. I think that's the guy that's going to need to set the tone, though. And that's why, for me, he's got to be in great. Yeah. So next up looks like Henderson.
Henderson, I think we're looking at a bench spot, aren't we, really, for Henderson, to be honest. Cam Akers seems to be the guy. We'll see how he does fitness-wise, but he seems to be the guy there. Like you said, they brought in a new running back as well, so I think bench spot is probably fair.
Okay, next up is the forgotten guy at the Jaguars. It's James Robinson.
Again, it's really difficult because he had a really, really good season, didn't he? That first year he was there, and I just don't see it. I don't see where he's going to be. I think he was the number 25 last year. I don't see him doing that well if Etienne is there and he's fit. So I think, yeah, bench spot for him.
He's in there with the Dolphins guys, isn't he? I think he's gonna have to prove himself again, and until he proves himself, he's not going to be the starter. So it's a bit of a shame because he did have that fantastic year. Next up is a guy, I think you're hot on him again for fantasy as well. It's Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yeah, well, the reason I am is because of where he's being drafted. I mean, he's going around the beginning of the 8th round. So, you know, I mean, you're talking about a guy who he was the number 12 last year. That offense is still not great. Don't get me wrong, obviously, like they've brought in Drake London, so they will be slightly improved, but he's still going to get used a lot. He's going to be great in the receiving game. You know, I mean, we saw him, didn't we, last year when he played against the Jets, and yeah, I think he's going to be decent. I don't think he'll have a RB1 season. I think he's average myself. But you can get him at a really, really cheap price. I mean, if you want a starter in the 8th round, then he's your guy.
I think he's in the potential category.
Yeah.
Because he's never done it back to back, has he?
No, he hasn't. But like I say, I don't think he will be that guy who gets. Like I said, he came 12. I don't see that happening. But like I say, RB2, I'm looking at like down to 24. I think he could come in the top 24. So, you know, I mean, he's probably the back end of average and sort of like the top of potential. But yeah, I think he's a solid guy in the 8th round who will get you points every week.
He's good in the flex. Definitely good in the flex.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan. I haven't been a massive fan since he's been there. I don't think the run game gets used much. I've got him at number 22. He's going in the 5th round. There's lots of guys that I think I'd rather go, like a Miles Sanders in the 5th round. You know, as you said, Elijah Mitchell, Damian Harris. I think I would have over them. The run game is just not that important to the Chiefs, whether they like to admit it or not. I think he's back end of average, top of potential.
I think again he's another guy until he proves it. He's potential for me. I loved him at LSU, and until we see that form again, he's in potential. He struggled with injuries last year, so he'll do a job. He's good for them, but it's potential when it comes to fantasy. Next up, Derrick Henry, King Henry.
Yeah, we got another elite guy. He stays fit. If he stays fit, if McCaffrey stays fit, and Jonathan Taylor does what he did last year, then it's going to be a hell of a fight to see who ends up as the number 1 guy. Because, you know, with AJ Brown gone, it is literally Derrick Henry. So, yeah, I think he's elite. I've got him as my number 3.
That's nothing we haven't seen before at the Titans. You know, AJ Brown had injuries and COVID and everything last year, and we were like, oh, they're not gonna do anything, and they just gave the ball to Henry, and it was that's all they need to do. He is that good. He's only had 1 injury. Last year was the first time we've seen him take a knock, so I don't think there's concerns like there is with McCaffrey, who's had multiple injuries. So yeah, there's no reason for me why you wouldn't want to take Derrick Henry as high as possible. So I think he'd be in the conversation. I think there'll be people that would still take him at 1 just because.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be against it. It wouldn't be the worst decision in the world, but for me, I think if I was in the position, if I wanted to go for the gamble, I'd go for McCaffrey, and if I wanted the steady running back who's going to get me a shed load of yards, then I would probably go for Taylor.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Fully agree with that. Next up, Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards, same as J.K. Dobbins. I think he's not as good. He has potential, I would probably say, with Gus Edwards, but I think he might. J.K. Dobbins is going to get most of the work, so I think potential is probably RB3 kind of level.
Yeah, he might not even sneak into RB3 if Dobbins is fully fit. I think he'll then just be used to give Dobbins a rest. I think. But you know, he has the potential, so I think potential is the right place for him to sit at. It's a great category. Next up is Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, Walker is an interesting one. I haven't seen loads of tape on him. They're very hot on Penny, aren't they? They like Penny. I think it could be quite an even split though with Walker. This is, he's the guy who's basically coming in to take over Chris Carson. So I think because of that, he'll get a lot of work. I probably would have him as a bench spot myself.
This guy,
it's difficult. It's he, I mean, by using the word potential, he literally does have the potential, but it's you're in a team where they're not going to do a lot, and I don't know.
I wouldn't write them off as much as we're writing the Seahawks off. I think they're never going to do anything in their division, but they're going to do stuff in games. I think they've still got the talent on that team to do stuff in games. And no joke, this guy carried Michigan State. They had no other big names on that team, just him, and he carried them into a graded, ranked position in college football, and he did that single-handedly. This guy, in some games, had like 200 yards and like 5 touchdowns to himself. He has that. He's got that ability, which is why for me he was the #1 running back out of college. So I think he's got to be in potential because he has the ability to do it on that team. I think they'll use him a lot as well. I think Penny hasn't stayed fit for last 3 years, has he? 3-4 years? We haven't seen Penny for a long time. His year, maybe.
Yeah, he does have a tendency to get injured, doesn't he, Penny? So I suppose because of that, you have to kind of think that he might end up again. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty close. So I think they'll split it. So, but if Penny was to get injured, obviously Walker would fly up. So I don't quite know where he's going though with Walker, but yeah, I mean, I suppose potential is probably pretty good for him.
I'd take the gamble on him probably over Gus Edwards, maybe James Cook. I'd take him over them. So yeah. Next up is the guy we just spoke about, Rashad Penny.
Yeah, again, because of the injuries, I think potential is probably the thing that's going to happen. It's a difficult one with him, but I don't know what he's going to do. But yeah, I think that you'll probably find that. I don't know. I haven't got him in my top 30, so yeah. I think because of that, you're probably looking at a bench spot for him.
Yeah, I think he's got potential, but not a lot of upside for me. I think you probably take a risk on putting him on your bench to see what happens, and then you might get in your team. But he's probably definitely worth putting on your bench to find out. I probably wouldn't leave him on the waivers and try and get him in waivers as he produces the goods. Next up, a guy for me, I'm putting in elite. I don't know about you, Najee Harris.
Yeah, he's my number 5. Like I said, I had 5 that are for me are in elite. I think he's right at the end of it. He's going to have. I think there's a very, very good chance that he is going to have an absolute shed load of work again, and I think because of that, he's definitely going to be elite. He's going in the first round. He was I think in a lot of ones I've seen, he's not even the number 5 in certain ones. Some people are taking him 3rd or 4th overall. Yeah. I think he's going to be great, and he had 1,200 yards last year, and he did quite a lot in the receiving game as well. I think it'll be possibly more, just purely because the quarterback situation. Yeah,
it's the easier option just to hand it off to him, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you've got a young guy in there, if Kenny Pickett is the starter and he's struggling, he might want to use that as a fullback. So. Yeah, I think Najee Harris is easily elite in his talent. He can do it all. He's one of those guys that can do it all. He can run and catch. But there's 2 names still on here, and if you said you've only got 5 in the elite, I'm wondering how some of these guys aren't getting on there. And the first one is Dalvin Cook.
So Dalvin Cook, I've got him as my number 6, and I think he is the slight drop down from them five for me. He was running back 15 last year. He had a decent season, but it
Injured as
wasn't
well, wasn't
great. Yeah, he did miss a bit. Part of the reason that I think that he's not in the same section as the other ones is kind of a mixture of reasons, really. He has had a few injuries, not a lot, but he's had a few niggles, and it's difficult for me to come out and say that considering I've put McCaffrey up there.
he?
But he is kind of he has had a few niggles. He's also got Alexander Mattison behind him, who I think last year showed that he is capable. He's not Dalvin Cook, but he is capable. And that's why I feel like that doesn't help him. I think he's on a team where he's got a new head coach, but he is a defensive head coach. Now I know that Zimmer was defensive as well, but it's just not. I don't know. There's just something about it. I feel like he's the tier down. I just don't think he's quite as good, and I think because of that, that's why he's at the very, very top of great, but he's not quite elite.
I think based on what he's done in previous seasons, you'd put him at back end of elite. But equally, we've got Joe Mixon at the top end of great, and I think they're now on paper, if you put them both out there, have a similar talent. I think Dalvin Cook in the past has obviously been the better talent, but on paper now, I think they're about around the same. So I can agree that he'd be the same level as Mixon. So that would put him top end of great.
Yeah, I think they're quite a good comparison, to be honest. I think the only difference is I think that Mixon's in a team that's going to succeed, whereas I think Cook's in
potential person taking his place either. There's no other name at the Bengals, whereas like we said, Mattison is good. Next up is Travis Etienne.
I don't really know what to say about Etienne. I've never watched the man play. I mean, he didn't play last year. I've seen him in college, but I've never seen him in the NFL. If I have to listen or get a message from Johnny one more time saying how can they grade him as this or that because he's never played, I'm gonna go mad. So I don't know. I think he's gonna get the opportunity. And so because of that, I think I'll probably put him at the back of average. I think he's got RB2 potential. He's going around the 5th round. But again, he's going around players like Miles Sanders and Damian Harris. I think I'd rather opt for them because I don't really know. But yeah, I think he's at the back of average for me just because I don't know.
I really liked Etienne at college. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He was with Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. He was the main reason that they drafted him because blatantly Trevor Lawrence went, pick him, please. So he's definitely got the talent. But until we see it in the NFL, I'm grading him at potential. I don't think you can grade him alongside Miles Sanders, who's proven that he can do it in a tough in a team that hasn't been great. Miles Sanders done it in, and we haven't seen Etienne yet do it. So I think until then, he's got to be potential still. Would you risk round 5 on him? Would you?
No, I wouldn't. Like I said, I would go for I'd go for Sanders. I'd go for Harris in round 6. I'd go for Patterson in round 8. I'd go for these other guys that have done it and are proven to do it.
Don't have a lot of upside, do they?
Well, I mean, I suppose the only thing you can really say with the Jags is with a new coach, you feel like it's going to improve. It can't be any worse, sort of thing. So in that respect, it might improve. I don't know. It's difficult. Yes, he has plenty of potential. I think he really is borderline RB2, RB3 for me, which is why I've got him around 24, 25, that kind of mark. I think from everything I've read about him at college, he was the guy. So they feel like he could really be amazing. But yeah, for me, I can't have him any higher than that, and I don't think I'd take him in the 5th round, which is where he's going at the moment.
He played in the best team in college at that time. He's now playing
Yeah.
in one of the worst NFL teams. So, you know.
Yeah.
Mattison.
I don't think he's going to be anything other than a bench spot, really. Cook's going to take all the reps. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can't risk putting him in your lineup and scoring 1-2 points, which is going to be the story if that's the case. So, yeah, he's back up at best. Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt, I've got him as a sort of back end of average, top of potential kind of guy. He does well when he plays. He's had a few injury worries. He's getting a little bit older now, but he's still a good running back. However, he's not going to get tons and tons of reps because of the guy who I'm assuming is coming up next.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Kareem Hunt, Nathan had him last year, and I didn't think Kareem Hunt would score well in fantasy with Nick Chubb in front of him. And he managed to put up starting lineup points for them. So you've got to put him in average. He's still scoring the points, despite the fact that Chubb will get all of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he finished as the number 46, so he didn't have a great season, but I think you'll probably find that he did have weeks where he did quite well.
Mm-hmm.
He's decent. He's a decent running back. We've said it for ages. He's a decent running back. I think, to me, I think he's probably going more towards the RB3 section, but he's in a team that's, I think, is going to run a lot because I don't think they're going to have their quarterback there. So I think they're going to have to run the ball a lot, and that kind of suits them. So yeah, I think he's probably around that mark.
Last guy on the board, Nick Chubb.
I think because of Hunt, it takes a lot away from Chubb, and that's why he's not elite. It's purely, I think, as a player, he's amazing, and if he had the opportunity to do both, I think he'd be great. But he won't. He won't have that opportunity. So I think he's very much at the top end. However, I would say I'd probably take Cook. I'd probably take Mixon. I don't think I'd take Kamara, but I might take Swift. I think I'd take them ahead of him now because of Hunt being there. And the other thing is, and this is a big problem with the Browns, you've got no idea what's going to happen at the moment. So yeah, he's great, but he's not elite.
I think he's elite. I really do. I think with what's going on at the Browns as well, only makes him more elite. I think if Watson obviously banned, they're going to revert back to let's give the ball to Chubb. I think they use him the same way that the Titans use Derrick Henry, and he's of an ability to produce the same as Henry does on his day. So I think he's worth more than Kamara, Mixon, and Cook. I think he's elite. I think he's scoring. He's going to be used. He's not going to be used.
I think he'll be used. I would struggle to draft him over Mixon just because of Hunt. I think the fact that Kareem Hunt is there means that he will take a lot of reps away from him, and that's enough. And that if Watson doesn't play and Baker Mayfield throws his toys out the pram a bit more and refuses to play as well, that offense is not going to get you a lot of points. There are not going to be many touchdowns coming out of that offense if that's what happens. Because who have they got? Like, who's the next quarterback for them? It's no one of any note.
Jacoby Brissett, did they bring him in?
Right. Okay. Well, we've seen that story before. So, yeah, I just... The problem is yeah, he'll be used a lot, but guess what? All the defenses will know that he's going to be used a lot, and they'll react accordingly and stuff like that. So to me, like I say, I would take Mixon over him. and I think I'd probably take Swift over him. But it's close. Him and Swift are close. But it's to me, I just don't think he's going to get the opportunity.
I will put him at the top end of grade, but I hope that he proves you wrong. And when we reevaluate this at the end of the year, he is in elite. Because if he's available for me to draft, I'm taking him over.
Yeah, and we saw how well that went last year, didn't we?
Yeah, fantastic, mate. What are you on about? We'll see, won't we? I'd take him definitely. I think he's an elite talent. Yeah, so that's the complete one. I'm sure we'll put it out on social media and let everyone scrutinize our decisions.
It's for fantasy. For fantasy, everyone. Please remember, it's for fantasy.
Redraft as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll continue this if you guys are enjoying it. Wide receivers is going to be up next for us. We have got so much going on. If you wanted to go on to our YouTube and check it out, we've got loads of Friends of the Franchise series that we've got loads of guests, familiar faces that you'll know from around NFL podcasting, TV, things like that. So there's loads gone on there. I know you've done a few of the interviews, haven't you, Adam?
Yeah, I was on the last one that went out. We had Sam Morgan on from Burge Magazine. I know that the next one that's going out is going to be Cameron Hogwood, Sky Sports reporter. So he's going to be on. Yeah, we've got a few that are on. I think it's going to be Freddie and Abby doing that one, so you can listen to them. And yeah, we've got plenty of guys lined up, and it should be fun. So yeah.
Until then, thanks for joining and see you soon.